This conference
Uh,
will now be recorded.
Sir, please start the session.
Uh, Hi everyone. Thank you, Priyanka. Thanks a lot. I hope everyone is able to hear my voice clearly. So, friends, my name is Sai Krishna, and I'm currently working as a Docker captain for an organization called CSS Corp. Before we start off with the actual thing, there's the request to all of you that is, please remain on mute until you want to ask any questions. At the end of the session, I will be actually taking up questions from all of you. So we will have ample time to discuss all your questions and everything. Okay, so just to avoid the background noise, I request all of you to remain on mute. Okay, so today's session is a very quick introduction towards making you understand what exactly is Kubernetes and what is Docker. Online candidates, can someone confirm if my voice is audible? Because there are some candidates who are posting that they are not able to hear my voice. Can you ping your confirmation? Yeah, thanks, Vijay Sagar, brilliant. Thank you, Rahul. So thanks a lot. So friends, I mean, probably there's a network issue from their side. From our side, everything is clear. So friends, this is a webinar on Kubernetes with Docker. I'm sure everyone is aware currently that Kubernetes is the buzzword in the IT industry. There are lots and lots of job openings that you exclusively find on Kubernetes with Docker. Okay, that's the reason we are actually saying that all of you remain on mute so that all the background disturbance would be reduced. But again, friends, please don't unmute until you would like to ask any questions. Okay, I think it should be good now, except my voice. You should not be able to hear any other voice. Okay, fine. So friends, so we will give a very quick introduction towards what is Kubernetes and what is Docker. Before we can really understand what is Kubernetes and why Kubernetes is having such a huge demand in the IT sector, I mean, I just give you a very simple example of what is the potential of Kubernetes currently. You can just open Naukri or Monster and search for exclusive jobs on Kubernetes with Docker. You will see that the people who have 3 years of experience, 3 to 5 years of experience, these people are being paid a salary of approximately 35 to 40 lakhs in India. I'm not talking about US or Australia or some other country. In India, in Hyderabad or Bangalore or any of these cities, a person with 3 to 5 years of experience on Docker and Kubernetes is getting an average salary of 35 to 40 CTC. That's where they are, that's the kind of packages that are being given. But what is the reason? What is the reason for the popularity of Kubernetes? In order to understand this, we need to have some basic understanding of Docker, okay? Because Kubernetes is nothing but it's doing Docker container orchestration. So let's try to have a very simple understanding of what is Docker, what are containers, and then how Kubernetes is doing the container orchestration, okay? So probably everyone is able to, I'm sure everyone is able to see my screen. So friends, in order to understand Kubernetes, we'll first have a basic introduction to Docker, where we'll be understanding virtualization and containerization. Please watch. I'm sure everyone is aware of this concept called as virtualization, right? Virtualization, probably this has revolutionized the way in which the cloud is currently working. The entire cloud technologies, whether it is Amazon Cloud or Microsoft Azure or any of the cloud technologies, the base platform which has enabled to build this cloud is a technology called as virtualization. Now, I'll just start off with a very simple example. Back in my college days, when I wanted to practice Linux or Unix related commands, what we used to do is, obviously, the laptop or the desktop that we used to use was a Windows machine, right? But because we wanted to practice Linux and we wanted to install Linux, we used to create what is called as a dual boot machine. Dual boot machine in the sense, when you're starting the computer itself, it will ask you whether you want to log in into Windows or Linux. You choose which operating system you want, and only that operating system will be loaded into the memory, which means you can work only on that OS. But probably your generation, you people will be using a software called as VMware or Oracle VirtualBox All these are different virtualization softwares which enable you to run multiple operating systems on one single host operating system. Okay, it's something like this. Let me show it with a very simple example. We call this technology as hypervisor. Okay, what is the meaning of hypervisor? We'll understand. Then we'll move into what is the disadvantage of hypervisor and how Docker is trying to solve that. Okay, so we'll try to go with basic terminology so that even a lay person who has zero knowledge of Docker should be able to understand what we are actually talking over here. Okay, so friends, just look at my screen. When we use the word virtualization, the environment looks something like this. As always, you have a hardware, a brand new piece of, let's say, your server or laptop or whatever. We generally call it as bare metal. Okay, on top of this bare metal, we install a software which is called as the host operating system, which can be your main operating system. Most of us, of course, Windows, maybe it can be Mac or something else. So that the main operating system which is loaded into your machine, we call it as the host OS. And on top of the host OS, we install a software which is called as hypervisor. Okay, just give me a second. I think there's still some background noise coming up. I think it should be okay now. Okay, so friends, please watch. Hypervisor, examples of hypervisor are nothing but your softwares like VMware, or else there is something called as Citrix, Zen, Microsoft Hyper-V. All these are different softwares which come under the same categorization of virtualization softwares. And on top of this hypervisor, we install our guest operating system. Okay, when you say guest operating system, one guest operating system can be Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Another can be Windows 2016 Server Edition. It can be anything. Okay, and on top of this, we install the applications that we want. Imagine I want Oracle, or here I want Microsoft SQL Server. Okay, whatever it is, this is the architecture of how a virtualization software works. On your host operating system, you are installing this software called hypervisor, which is enabling you to run multiple guest operating systems, and on top of the guest operating system, you can install whichever application you want. I'm sure all of you are aware of this. Generally, we have two types of softwares. One is called as a system software and other one is called as a application software. What is the difference? Application software is something that end users like you and me are interested in, whereas system software is something that can interact with the hardware. For example, I want to use MS Office, I want to use Skype or any other software like this. Now these are application softwares. You can't install Skype or MS Office on a brand new laptop or server where operating system is not present, right? In order to install MS Office, first of all, you should have the Windows operating system. Only when you have the OS, on top of this, these applications can be installed. As an end user, we are always interested in the applications. But unfortunately, these applications have some dependency on the operating systems. Different applications have different types of dependencies on different types of operating systems. For example, if I download Skype, okay, because I'm using a Windows machine, I'll go to the Microsoft site and I'll try to download the Skype. What will happen? You'll get a setup file. You just install it, next, and you do the installation. Once Skype is installed, of course, as all of you know, we can do video calls and all that. But the Skype exe file or the setup file that I have downloaded, can I give it to my friend who is using a Mac machine or another friend who is using a Linux machine and expect him to install on that operating system? No, it doesn't, because the Skype that I have downloaded has been exclusively designed to work only on Windows. You can't run the same setup file on Mac or Linux. This does not mean that Skype will not work on Mac or Linux. Skype does work. If you go to the Skype site, they'll show you Skype for Windows, Skype for Mac, Skype for Linux, Skype for Android. You download the respective version and then it will work on that corresponding operating system. So what I'm actually trying to tell you is, these applications which end users are always interested in are always having a dependency on different types of operating systems. Okay, certain applications are designed to work on maybe a Red Hat Linux server. There's some other application which is designed to work on a Windows server, and If at all, if you have a scenario where you want to use both these applications parallelly, then you will see that virtualization becomes mandatory. Okay, virtualization will become mandatory. Okay, so just look at my screen. I'll give you an example. Imagine that in my organization, the database is running on SQL Server, which is a product of Microsoft. Okay, and now they want to migrate all this data into an Oracle database, which is running on Red Hat Linux. SQL Server, being a product of Microsoft, will run only on Windows Server. And Oracle, I'm using the corresponding version of Oracle, which is related to Red Hat Linux. So my interest is I want to maintain SQL Server, migrate all this data into Oracle database. The problem is, to maintain this Oracle database, I have to maintain Red Hat Linux. To maintain the SQL Server, we have to maintain Windows 2016 Server. So the virtualization technology is enabling you to run both these operating systems on a single piece of hardware parallelly. It's not that when you switch off one OS, you can start the other OS. All these guest operating systems, you know, what we are installing on top of the hypervisor, we generally call those machines as guest OS. The main operating system, of course, is called as the host OS. So the applications we are able to run on top of the guest OS, and you can perform whatever activities you want. That's what you are doing with your VMware. Via VMware, you are able to install whatever operating systems you want, because this is the architecture that your VMware workstation or your Oracle VirtualBox is following. The problem over here is in virtualization, the problem is when this application is running, this Oracle application is running, obviously this Oracle application will be consuming some amount of hardware resources, right? So it has to communicate with the guest operating system. The guest operating system will talk with the hypervisor. The hypervisor will communicate with the host OS, and finally it is the host OS which is communicating with the hardware, and it is allocating the necessary amount of CPU or RAM or whatever it is, which means the applications which are running on top of the guest OS have to pass through so many layers in order to access the hardware resources. This is happening in virtualization. As I told you earlier, the entire cloud technology is running on virtualization. Now, to counteract this problem, to overcome this problem, they have come up with a much more better technology, a powerful technology, which is called as containerization. And Docker is one tool which is capable of implementing containerization. There are other tools also, but Docker is the most powerful tool using which you can create containers. Now listen carefully. It's really interesting if you understand what I'm talking about. If you people have had the experience in installing an operating system on your physical machine or on VMware or any other virtualization software, okay, how much time does it generally take to install a Windows OS or a Red Hat Linux or a CentOS? Anything is okay. Generally, a typical installation of a Windows or a Linux, how much time do you think it will take? I'm sure it will take nothing less than 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Absolutely, Sanjay. It will take 100% will take more than 30 minutes. And if it's a server edition, it will take more time also. Now Docker comes into picture. With Docker, I can create that same fresh installation of OS in less than 2 seconds. I repeat it. You can have a fresh installation of Docker in less than 2 seconds. Before you can actually close and open your eyes, before you can realize what is happening, you will see that Docker can do a fresh installation of a brand new operating system. It's not just about operating system. It can literally install any kind of software within that speed. Okay. Now, what is the architecture of Docker? Let's first understand. What Docker does is, again, the same drama. You have a brand new piece of hardware or server, on top of which you have your original operating system, host OS, and on this we install a software which is called as the Docker engine. Okay, this Docker engine which will enable you to run the applications directly without having any dependency on the operating system, which means I can have Oracle database running over here, I can have Microsoft SQL Server database running over here. Earlier we said that This SQL server is having dependency on Windows Server, whereas Oracle Oracle database is having dependency on Red Hat Linux. So what Docker is doing is it is removing that dependency. Docker, by definition, if you just look into the Docker documentation or any of the blogs related to Docker, the first thing they say is Docker performs process isolation. What is the meaning of process isolation? Oracle is a process, SQL Server is a process, Microsoft MS Office is a process, Skype is a process. All these are processes. It performs process isolation. What is the meaning of the word isolation? It's separating the dependency that the process has on the underlying operating system. It is removing that dependency and it is enabling everything to run directly on the Docker engine. Now, due to which, what is happening is, now this Oracle database, when it wants to consume some hardware resources, it will communicate with the Docker engine. Docker engine will talk to the host OS. Host OS will talk to the underlying hardware, and it will allocate the necessary amount of hardware resources. So one advantage that you can clearly see is these processes or applications are passing through very less number of layers in order to access the hardware resources. That's one thing. Okay, and the second thing is that this applications can be deployed in just a matter of seconds. Okay, that was what I was actually trying to tell you. See, if you want to do a brand new installation of Red Hat Enterprise Linux or a brand new installation of CentOS, all of you will accept that it will take 40 minutes, 45 minutes or something like that. But if I am using Docker to do the same thing, I can create it in less than 2 seconds. Okay, it's not just operating systems. It can be anything. It can be anything. I'll give you an example. See, let's imagine that in your organization, the developers are using Java. Okay, so which means they need to have JDK installed. Their databases are running on MySQL. Okay, and the application servers their team is using is, imagine it's Tomcat. So you can call this complete environment that I have drawn over here as the dev environment. Now this dev environment, you just ask any system admin how much time he will take for creating this entire setup. He'll say 4 hours, 5 hours, or even more. I have to first install MySQL, maybe create some tables over there, integrate that MySQL with another installation of Tomcat, then integrate that with JDK. Now with Docker, I can do this in less than 2 minutes. Few seconds for starting all these 3 containers and just link all of them with each other. So whether it is a development environment or a testing environment or any kind of environment that your organization requires, Docker can create that in just a matter of seconds with the help of what we are calling over here as containers. Okay, so the technology that we are learning in Docker is one step ahead of virtualization. It's not virtualization, we call it as containerization. Okay, both are actually different. So Docker is enabling us to perform containerization. Now, what is the building block for this containerization? In order to do this containerization, Docker uses something called as images and containers. To make it very simple, image is nothing but a piece of software. Once you download and install it, we call it as a container. For example, any software that you download from the internet, let's say I'm downloading Skype, I'll get a setup file. You can call that setup file as an image. I mean, it's not same, but in Docker terminology, you call that as an image. By definition, the Docker image is just a combination of binaries and libraries which are necessary for one software application to run. Once it is installed and once it comes into running condition, you call it as a container. For example, I download Skype, I get a setup file. Don't you think that from this setup file, I can do any number of installations? So similar to that, the Docker software is given to you initially in the format of an image, and all these images, whatever Docker images we generally use, are present in the cloud site of Docker, which is called as hub.docker.com. This is the location where all the Docker images are there. We download them, we install them, and we start them as containers. Once a container is started, that container will allow you to perform the process isolation that I was actually talking about. Okay. One advantage that I told you just now is if you are using Docker containers, one advantage is you can actually create that environment. whatever environment you want, you can create it in just a matter of few seconds. Okay, and practically we'll be going to see all these scenarios in the coming sessions. For example, using Docker, we will see how to create what is called as a LAMP architecture. You know what is LAMP? This is an open source architecture where they use Linux as an operating system, and P stands for PHP. The development happens via PHP. M stands for MySQL. The database that they are using runs on MySQL. A stands for Apache Tomcat. So this is the development environment, which is popularly called as LAMP architecture. Now through Docker, you can create this entire architecture in just a matter of seconds. And Docker always, the documentation of Docker says that you can use Docker at all the stages of build, ship, and run. You know what this means? The same environment where the application is created, you can bundle that environment, you can ship that environment, and you can deploy that into the production environment, which means there is no scope of developers saying that in my environment it was working fine, but maybe in the production environment there is something wrong, it's not working. No, Docker enables you to copy the complete environment as simply as you copy a simple file, and you can deploy that into whichever environment you want, whichever servers you want. Okay, I'll give you a very simple example to make you understand that on a high level, something like this. As all of you can see, I am using a Windows operating system. Okay, and imagine that my requirement is to I want to take a backup of this machine. Okay, this is my Windows machine, and if I want to take a backup of this machine, what will I do? I'll take a backup of all the data, whatever files I have, whatever folders I have. I'll take a backup of all this into some external device, and then I'll format this laptop. Once I format the laptop, all of you know that everything will go away. Is it possible to take a backup of these applications which are installed? When we say backup, what is the meaning of the word backup? Backup is only for data, your documents, your files, your photos, your videos, that you can take a backup. Can I take a backup of the Microsoft Office which is installed? I can take a backup of the Word files or the Excel files or the PowerPoint presentations, but you can't take a backup of the MS Office which is installed. You can't take a backup of the Skype that is installed. That's not possible. Once I do a fresh installation, again I have to install MS Office on it. Again I have to install Skype on it. But Docker comes over here and it says that you can copy this complete environment, which means the complete operating system along with the applications which are installed on it, along with the data which is installed on it, everything you can copy as simply as you copy your files and folders. How simply I can copy a file into my pen drive and give it to my friend so that he can copy that into his machine. In the same way, you can copy this entire environment, which includes operating system, which includes the applications that are installed, the databases that are installed, anything, and the data which is present. Everything you can copy and you can transfer it from one machine to another machine in just a matter of seconds. It's as simply as you copy a file. It's possible to copy the entire environment. That is the potential of what Docker can do. And of course, we will be actually discussing in depth all these things as we go with the sessions. As we were seeing in the PowerPoint slide, we will be starting off with the Docker containerization, where we'll try to understand what are Docker images, what are Docker containers, and once this is over, we'll move into a very advanced concept called as Docker Compose, which is used for creating this multi-container architecture. Okay, I'll tell you, I'll just talk about a use case where I have implemented Docker in my current organization. This was a project that we have finished recently. I'll tell you. The client for which I was actually working, their requirement was they wanted to test their application before it is released. They wanted to test their application. Is that the same as VM clone? Kishore, yes, it's almost similar to VM clone, but it's much more faster, very, very faster. Okay, I'll answer that also. So friends, Docker Compose is a tool using which you can create a multi-container architecture. And let me explain a scenario that I have used. The client for which I am currently working, they said that their requirement was they wanted to test this application on multiple browsers and operating system combinations. You know what that means? For example, they wanted to test it on Mozilla Firefox 25 to 54. Similarly, on Google Chrome, they wanted to test on multiple browsers. When it came to Internet Explorer, they wanted to test on 8, 9, 10, 11. They wanted to test the application on the Edge browser. All this on Windows 10 operating system. On Windows 10, they wanted all these browsers to be installed so that we had a team of testers who were creating their automation testing programs using a tool called as Selenium. Okay, that's testers' headache. It's not our responsibility. A testing team was creating the Selenium programs, and we wanted to run those Selenium programs. These Selenium programs were designed in such a way that if this architecture was available with all these browsers and operating systems, the programs would run parallelly and test our client's application, okay, whether it's working correctly or not. Okay, but the requirement did not end over here. Isn't it true that Windows 10 again comes in multiple flavors? Home edition, standard edition, enterprise edition, ultimate edition. On all these different operating systems, they wanted to test with all these different browser and OS combinations. Now, Windows 10 is not the only thing. We have Windows 8, we have Windows 8.1, Windows 7, and the same setup they wanted to do on a Mac machine or also on the Linux. When you say Linux, it moves into innumerable flavors. Red Hat Enterprise Linux, it can be CentOS, it can be Amazon Linux, it can be Oracle Enterprise Linux, different flavors of Linux. Now, how can you imagine how many permutations and combinations of browsers and operating systems are required? Our team estimated that approximately we required 800 plus browser and OS combinations on which they wanted to test their application. And initially, because creating this infrastructure of 800 browser and OS, whether they are physical machines or virtual machines, is because it's a very difficult task. Initially, our organization depended on a cloud service provider called as Sauce Labs. Later, because it was too expensive, we did a little bit of POC and we estimated that we could create this complete environment using Docker, this Docker Compose that you see. And you know what? This 800 plus browser and OS combinations, we were able to deploy in less than 6 servers. In just 6 servers, we were able to create a complete environment where 800 browser and OS combinations were present, and the Selenium automation testers could happily run their programs and do the testing on these many browser and OS containers in just 6 machines. Can you imagine running 800 virtual machines on 6 physical machines like what we are using? I'm not talking about servers. I'm just talking about simple six servers with maybe 8 GB of RAM or something like that. With that kind of configuration, we were able to run 800 containers in just 6 machines. That is the potential of Docker, and practically we will be going to see all these in our sessions. I mean, we will be seeing Docker Compose, where we can understand how we can create a development environment, where a testing environment can be created, where a production environment can be created. So all that stuff we'll practically see. And with this basic understanding of Docker, where Kubernetes is coming into picture. What is Kubernetes? Kubernetes is a product of Google earlier. Currently, it's an open source tool. Kubernetes was a product of Google, which is used for performing container orchestration. Container orchestration. What is the meaning of container orchestration? In fact, it's not just Kubernetes which can do that. Docker also has come up with its own tool, which is called as Swarm, which can also do the same activity. Though Swarm has not yet become as popular as Kubernetes, Swarm can also do the same activities, and we will be covering both Kubernetes and Swarm in depth, because going down the lane, Kubernetes is slowly on a dying phase, and it is Swarm which is increasingly becoming more and more popular in the market. So we'll be concentrating on both, using both Kubernetes and Swarm. We will try to understand what is container orchestration. Now watch. When you use the word container orchestration is basically used for performing activities like load balancing, auto scaling, okay, or else high availability, disaster recovery, or performing rolling updates. These are the scenarios where whether it is Kubernetes or Docker Swarm, both come into picture. Okay, What is the meaning of load balancing? Just now I told you that I can create Docker containers in just a matter of seconds. Imagine that my organization is using Tomcat, okay, and my application is hosted in Tomcat. So because Docker is very fast, I created a Tomcat container, and that Tomcat container, my development team is putting their artifacts and all that is happening. Now this Tomcat, people are trying to hit, I mean, whatever is my website, imagine that this intelliqit.com is hosted in Tomcat. So this Tomcat container, being a very small container, imagine it has a capacity of only 100 user load. When 100 people are trying to access my web application, it's working fine. That is the capacity of the Tomcat container. But now my business has expanded, and I feel that 100 user load Tomcat container is not sufficient. I want to increase the capability. So whether it is Kubernetes or Swarm, using that, what we can do is we can create what are called as replica containers. What is the meaning of a replica? Something like a clone. Replica is something like a clone wherein you can have multiple containers, but the same Tomcat service which is running over here will be scaled into these containers also, which means now I'm having 4 such replicas, and now my capacity will be handling a user load of 400 people. It's not 4 different Docker containers. It's 4 containers all having the same service running on it. Now, even this is not sufficient to handle the traffic, because the number of people who are accessing my application is becoming more and more. So what I want to do is I want to have multiple servers where all these Tomcats can be deployed. It's something like this. Imagine this is my server 1. This is my server 2. This is my server 3. So initially I will put some Tomcat replicas. This is not sufficient to withstand my business load. So I will create some more Tomcat replicas, All these Tomcat replicas, though multiple replicas are there, it functions like one single instance of Tomcat. Now, what is happening? With this one single Tomcat, I am able to cater to a load of 100 users. Here, another 100 users, 100 users, 100 users. So what is happening? You are able to handle much higher user load, high availability we are able to promise. Google, when you say google.com, you will never see the response coming as server is down. Facebook.com, server is never down. Our internet goes down, but the Facebook, always you'll get the response. It's not that the Facebook servers are never going down. Facebook servers do go down, but what they have is immediately there are some replicas which take care of that. In case one of them has gone down, immediately the user request will be routed to the other replica, which will take care of processing whatever request the user is giving. So these kind of things you can actually handle when you are using either Kubernetes or Docker Swarm. We generally call it as container orchestration for performing this kind of activities. Now, container orchestration actually allows you to it promises, as you can see, it promises load balancing, it promises high availability. Just a second. So when you say Kubernetes, we are saying that Kubernetes can perform load balancing, auto scaling. When my business requirement has increased, currently I see Tomcat is running on 400 replicas or 400 containers, and depending on my business requirement, I should be able to upgrade it. It should move to 1000 if necessary, or when my business requirement has gone down, it should go down automatically, so that unnecessary, you're not unnecessarily using the resources. Okay, and it also promises high availability, 24/7. Any point of time, the end user should be able to access. And more importantly, disaster recovery. What is disaster recovery? Imagine that these Tomcat containers are running on these 3 servers. Okay, these are the servers where the Tomcat is running, and accidentally this server has gone down. It can be a crash at the level of operating system, or the physical server itself has gone bad, some network related issue, doesn't matter. Docker Kubernetes and Docker Swarm will ensure that these replicas which are running over here will automatically migrate into the other machines which are up and running condition. Okay, so these are the actual advanced concepts of how Docker is implemented at the level of production. If your organization is trying to implement Docker on a very high level at the level of production, these features they have to take care of. And Kubernetes is one such tool which promises that And the course that we are going to cover over here is purely a certification oriented and of course real-time oriented. We will be taking up all the real-time scenarios as I talked about. I'll be creating the same testing environment that I have created in my organization. We will be creating a dev environment where we'll try to link the LAMP architecture. We'll try to create a CI/CD environment where so many activities we'll try to see based on real-time scenarios. And also we will try to cover the Red Hat certification syllabus of Kubernetes. So if someone is interested in attending, if someone is interested in writing the Kubernetes exam, once our course is over, you should be able to do that. So both practical scenarios and certification orientation. Okay, that's how our course is actually geared towards. But this is just a brief introduction towards trying to explain what is Kubernetes and what we can do via Kubernetes. Any questions you have, any questions that you would like to ask, now it's time to ask. Either you can put the questions in the chat box, which I can read and answer, or else maybe you can directly unmute and ask the questions. But let's whichever is convenient for you, you can ask the questions. Online candidates, any questions if you would like to like me to address?
Krishna, what is difference between Swarm and Compose?
See, Docker Compose is basically a tool using which you create a multi-container architecture. For example, that LAMP architecture that I talked about, where I said that we would like to have a MySQL container linked with a PHP container and a Tomcat container. Now, this architecture you want to deploy, we create a simple YAML file which is called as a Docker Compose file. And once the file is created, using that file, any number of times you can simply create that environment and you can destroy that environment. But when it comes to Docker Swarm, that is different. If you want to replicate this environment on not one server, but on multiple servers you want to replicate, and you want to perform that container orchestration, which means the same environment I want to create on one server. Again, I want to create the same environment on another set of 100 servers. Then Docker Swarm comes into picture. Similarly, Kubernetes and Swarm both are called as container orchestration tools, where what Docker generally does on one machine with one container load, I want to just replicate it into multiple containers. I feel that there are lots of PHP containers. All these PHP containers should be linked with one single MySQL, and these PHP containers should be running on different machines. Then we use Docker Swarm or Kubernetes. If you just want to create a simple setup of multiple containers linked with each other, Docker Compose is sufficient. You don't require Kubernetes or Swarm for that. Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question here, Moses here. So I'm working as a technical project manager along with the pre-sales role. So what do you suggest for me? Which certification will be the best one?
Moses, how many years of experience do you have entirely?
10 plus.
10 plus years of experience. And do you have any skills related to any kind of administration, server administrations?
I worked on virtual machines and all earlier. Sometime long time back, I worked on it.
Fine. That's nice. Fine. So if you are actually interested in Docker related certification, there are no prerequisites except having some basic understanding of Linux, which is part of the course. We'll actually see that. But why we generally say that you can directly go up with Kubernetes certification with Docker is, the reason is, one thing is Docker is an individual tool. The only some basic understanding you need to have is, very basic understanding you need to have is about Linux, nothing more than that. Once you have that Linux understanding, virtualization knowledge would be an added advantage if you know it. Otherwise, even if you don't have virtualization knowledge, doesn't matter. Directly we can work on containerization. Basic understanding of Linux, Docker, and container orchestration, whether it is Kubernetes or Swarm. This is sufficient to go with the Docker certification. Docker also has its own certification, which is coming from the Docker community. And Kubernetes certification, of course, Red Hat people are offering that. So you can go with both the certifications. You can go for Docker Captain certification or Kubernetes certification. Both of them are having very, very, very high demand. And I don't want you to trust my words. I just want you people to, once the session is over, just try to open Naukri and search for what is the kind of packages that these people with Kubernetes knowledge are getting. You will clearly see that. So Moses, I would say that if you are actually looking for a good hike in the salaries currently compared to whatever you are getting, I would say that Kubernetes would have a clear-cut edge. It will be a clear-cut edge if you learn it. So that would be my suggestion, coming from that kind of background myself.
Yeah, I got it, but I think you are not answering my question correctly. No problem. What I'm trying to ask is for the pre-sales type and for the technical management and the technical account management, what kind of thing I want to know here, and any fundamental certification will do, or do I need to do? I don't want to do any complete technical certification like practice net, but kindly get back to me later on a call. I think you have my contact number. You can get back to me later.
Sure, definitely. Fine. So, friends, any other
Hello.
questions? Yeah.
Hello. I am Ashish Shukla.
Yeah.
I just want to ask that I am a fresher. I am a .NET developer, and I have just completed 1 year in my organization. So, can you just guide me how I can be? I can pursue my career in DevOps, and what kind of certifications should I prefer, or how it will help me in my future as I just started my career.
Fine, Ashish, let me tell you, Ashish. Currently, the course that I am talking about is not a DevOps course. It's purely a Docker-related course, Kubernetes with Docker. That's
Okay.
what I'm actually currently talking about. And with Docker, coming from a development background, it would be an added advantage. The reason is because you're a .NET developer, you're sure that you're using, let's say, you're using a .NET framework. And what is the application server that you are using? Maybe IAS.
Yeah. IIS server.
Yeah, IAS, and probably the database will be a SQL server.
SQL.
Yeah, SQL server, Microsoft SQL server. Probably this might be the architecture that you are currently using. Now, the very
Yes,
reason
sir. Yes.
the very reason that Docker has come into the market is they want to do cost cutting on the system admins who are actually working on the server setup, which means either the system admin should upgrade themselves into Docker, or the main intention is a developer or a tester can create his necessary environment with Docker. Probably you being a .NET developer, you have knowledge of how to create the C# programs and all that. But you will not do the installation of the SQL server and the IAS and the .NET framework on your machine. There will be some infrastructure team which will take care of all that stuff, right? Your responsibility is just to create the code. But Docker says that a developer should be able to do that. A developer, along with having his coding knowledge, he should be able to create whatever infrastructure he wants, and Docker can create this complete infrastructure in a matter of seconds. And you can see that it's possible with simple 2 or 3 commands. I can set up this entire environment linked with each other. So, as a developer, I would say that 100% having knowledge of Docker would be an advantage, but I will not suggest entire DevOps. The other tools of DevOps might not be that much useful for you want to continue as a developer.
So should I go for Docker certification only if I like?
Yes.
What do you suggest for me?
I would suggest you to have your, along with your coding knowledge, I would suggest both things, either Docker certification or Kubernetes certification. Both will help you. Any one of them.
Okay.
Docker
Okay, sir.
certification
Thank you.
you can directly do from the Docker corporation itself, and Kubernetes certification do from Red Hat. So any one of them is would be 100% added advantage. I mean, the main advantage over here is the upgrade in the kind of salaries that you will get. As a .NET developer with 1 year of experience, what kind of salaries you are getting, you will see that there will be a very huge hike if you put Kubernetes knowledge also.
Okay, sir.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your suggestion.
Right.
Hey Sai, this
Hi,
is
Sai
Sagar.
Krishna. This is Vinny Kumar.
Yeah, tell me.
I have one doubt on Kubernetes. I have deployed in Kubernetes cluster in AWS, so that every VM has one public IP, right? So can I able to bind this public IP with the services?
Absolutely. Elastic IPs over there? I'm sure your organization is using Elastic IPs, right?
Yeah.
If it is Elastic IP, 100% you can bind it.
So we are using Elastic IP in the sense, if is there any chance without Elastic IP, is there any chance that public IP can able to bind with service?
You can't, because you know that's not how AWS works. Because AWS always, what it does is, the moment you restart your machine, you will see that
Yeah.
the public IP would always change, right? If I stop
Yes.
my
Yes.
machine, start it,
Yeah.
the
Yeah. It
public
will
IP.
get changed.
So there's no way that you can do it until that IP address is bound to that machine, which can be done using Elastic IPs. Until you do that, it's not possible to do it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Any other questions, friends?
And one more doubt on Docker.
Yeah. Yeah, tell me.
Can we able to do CI/CD with DIND?
Can we do CI/CD with?
DIND, Docker in Docker.
Absolutely, you can. Absolutely. You can do CI/CD with Docker. I can actually do CI/CD in multiple ways. You know what? I'll actually tell you. For example, I'll probably, those of you who have knowledge of CI/CD might understand this. If you don't, it doesn't matter, because practically we will be seeing all these scenarios in our Docker sessions. And just watch. What I can do is, if I want to create a CI/CD environment, one solution is, rather than using DIND, I can create a Docker Jenkins container, and I can integrate it with maybe my Tomcat containers or whatever. Maybe this is my QA server, this is my prod server, and with this I should be able to set up that complete CI/CD flow. That's one scenario. The other thing is that there's another way in which generally organizations implement this CI/CD. What they do is, they create something called as a Docker file. This Docker file is actually a text-based file which contains information about how a Docker image should be created. Now, this Docker file they will upload into some version controlling system. Okay, imagine that Git is my version controlling system. They'll upload this into the Git version controlling system. Now, I can take either Jenkins Docker container or a Jenkins regular installation, which will directly do entire CI/CD on this, which means it will download the code. It will create a new Docker image from this code. From this image, it will create a Docker container, deploy the application into the container, and once the activity is over, it will delete the container. So complete container lifecycle, if you want to automate, everything can be done.
Okay. 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 Thank you so much.
Yeah. What else? Any other questions, friends?
Hi, Sai, this is Mahesh.
Mahesh, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, there is one framework called Cypress in QA.
Yeah.
So can we implement Cypress in Docker environment?
See, I'm not really sure, because you can actually go to hub.docker.com, because that is where all the default Docker images are available. You can check if this image is present in
Sorry,
hub.docker.com.
your voice
Present
is
over 100% we will
speaking.
be able to implement, but I'm not sure. I have to just check with the hub.docker.com. Online candidates, except the person who is asking the question, we request everyone to be on mute, because it's just creating unwanted disturbance. Only the person who wants to ask the question can unmute, ask the question, and leave. So Mahesh, the applications which we generally use are already available in the cloud of Docker. Generally, what we do is, we download the images, we customize it according to our requirements. So whichever application you are interested in, we need to check whether that is available in the cloud side, because some of these applications which are licensed applications, you don't find them in Docker Hub. So in that scenario, we won't be able to do it. Anything else?
Okay, thank you, Sai.
Yeah.
Hi, Sai. Venkatesh here. I have a question.
Yeah.
Let's say now gaining an experience in learning this Kubernetes with Docker. When you comes to the real world environment, what kind of roles and responsibilities that we need to do? What kind of tasks that the organization will be given? So what they are expecting us to work on it exactly? I mean, like task based.
Venkatesh, that's what I was actually talking about. I mean, for example, a system admin. Let's talk about a regular system admin. All of you know that the system admin's responsibility is to create the environment, right? It can be server setup or infrastructure setup. The same setup as a Docker engine we will be creating based on our organization's requirement. Imagine that I am a Docker engineer, and in my organization there are multiple projects which are running, and they say that, okay, there is one client for whom the requirement is they are they are creating an application using WordPress, and this WordPress is linked with a MySQL database. So this is the environment that they are asking to create. As a DevOps engineer or as a Docker engineer, Docker captain, I'll do that. Similarly, I talked about the LAMP architecture. Imagine that this is the architecture that some other project or client is asking for. You create this complete environment. So the main purpose of a Docker engineer is to simplify the process of creating the infrastructure in such a way that the developers and testers, depending on their requirement, they can do that infrastructure according to their requirement. For example, I create a file called as a Docker compose file, and I give it to one particular team. Whenever they want to create this LAMP architecture, all those instructions will be present in this Docker compose file. With that file, they'll create that environment immediately. Similarly, this architecture, when they want to deploy, I'll create one more Docker compose file for them. This Docker compose file they can use n number of times, and they can just create that environment in a matter of seconds. They can delete that environment in a matter of seconds. So whichever environments are necessary, be it development, testing, or production environment, for that environment, we take the design, we create the necessary Docker compose file so that they can actually spin that environment. That's one thing. And the second thing is, we also are responsible for implementing Docker at the level of production, where it is our responsibility to take care whether all these containers are supporting whatever features I talked about: high availability, load balancing, or disaster recovery. Imagine that for some reason your entire, not one server, a cluster of servers where your applications are running have gone down. I have to create the Docker setup in such a way that even if a set of servers are down, still my business will not go down. A replica environment is created at some other location, and which will take care of the business requirement. So this kind of architecture creation, that is what we are involved in. I mean, it's really interesting job, really, really interesting. What else? Really, you'll enjoy all these activities.
Thank you.
Hello.
So Sai, this is Abhishek.
Yeah.
So Sai, this is Abhishek. Sai. So my question is that in Kubernetes we have basically two types of certification: certified Kubernetes administrator and certified Kubernetes developer. So just want to know the difference between tools. What is the exact difference between them?
I'll tell you. One is you are trying to learn Kubernetes from a development perspective, where they will be mainly interested. For example, earlier I think Ashish was asking me, I am a developer. He said that he's a C# developer, and he was asking how he can pursue his career. So I would say that Kubernetes from a development perspective would make sense for him, because their priority would be to understanding how to create our own customized Docker images. Okay, whereas a Kubernetes admin, his responsibility would be to take the images which are created by someone else and how he can deploy that into the necessary environment, the complete environment in production, how to create and how to deploy that. That is what they would be interested in. So admin's responsibility is not creating the Docker images, but trying to understand how many replicas we can create, how you can set up that environment where it can perform load balancing, auto scaling, etc. Whereas a developer's responsibility is mainly to understand the requirements of the client, and based on that create the corresponding Docker images. So a small example I'll give you. Rather than taking a Ubuntu or a CentOS image and installing MySQL continuously on it, my organization is saying that you create your own customized image of CentOS or Red Hat Linux, which is going to have MySQL already pre-installed on it, which means anyone who takes this image and starts it as a container should find that MySQL is already present. No need to install it again. This kind of activity where customization of existing images, that's done through a file called as Docker file, that is the responsibility of a Kubernetes developer. Deploying that into the necessary environment, that is the Kubernetes admin's concern. But when you're learning the course, you should learn both the things. Okay, certification, you can go with whichever choice you want. But you want to get a job on Kubernetes, you should be proficient with how to create your own customized images and how the deployment happens. Both we should learn, and we'll be concentrating on both those things.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Anything else?
Hi, Sai, Jalin here. Actually, hello.
Yeah, tell me. I can hear you.
Yeah, Sai. Actually, I am .NET developer with DevOps developer. So I am implementing CI/CD. I want to deploy that all the CI/CD through container. So now I am using that Jenkins for CI/CD. So for you said like the Docker file should be inside that Git, and the Jenkins will take that Git the Docker file and will do that CI/CD. Correct?
Yes.
So
Yes,
the
absolutely.
Docker file should contain like that. What it should contain? It should contain that code structure, or it should contain that environment things, or what I should keep inside that Docker file.
The Docker file only contains the environment that you want to set up, nothing more than that. Docker file always contains only the environment setup. Okay, but let me answer your. There are two things that we need to actually explain. Let me just tell you. Let's say you want to do CI/CD. Okay, what is the meaning of CI/CD?
Yeah.
Candidates, just a second. Please cooperate with us. I'll put everyone on mute. Too much noise coming up. So please remain like that. Please, all of you. Fine. So just watch. See, answering your question, imagine that this is the setup in your organization. Okay. Let's say this is your dev environment, this is your testing environment, this is my staging environment, and finally this is my production environment. Imagine that your developers are putting all their code into the Git repository. Now, what is the purpose of this continuous integration tool called Jenkins? What it will do is it will download this complete code which the developers are putting into the Git repository, and from this code it will create a artifact. It will create a setup file, right? Jenkins will deploy the setup file into the testing environment. We call this complete process as CI/CD. It will put it into the Jenkins will deploy it into the testing environment. And if your team, if your organization is having an automation testing team which is creating automation programs, Jenkins will pick up these programs and it will check whether this application is working correctly or not. If it is working correctly, if it does not, Jenkins will send automatic notifications and developers will fix the defects. And if it is working correctly, Jenkins will deploy that into the staging environment, where Jenkins will run some user acceptance testing cases, and finally, if everything is working correctly, it will deploy into the production environment. Generally, we call this process as CI/CD. Now, if your question is, can I implement this complete stuff rather than having the Jenkins installed on a Linux server? Can I do it via a simple Jenkins container? Yes, you can do that, and we'll show you that in the class. You can create a simple Jenkins container in a matter of seconds, and using that Jenkins container, you will be able to trigger this entire CI/CD. That's one thing. The second thing is, based on your question, imagine that you have a team of people who are creating Docker files which are containing code about how an image should be created, and this file they are uploading into the version controlling system. On this also we can do CI/CD. I can download this code, as I told you just a few minutes back. We can create a Docker build, an image out of this. From this image, you can create whatever containers you want. On this containers, you put up the environment setup, and finally you delete the container. This kind of CI/CD also you can do via Docker. Both we will see in our sessions. Both kind of scenarios I'll show you. Practically we'll see that. Okay. So friends, any other questions? Or I mean, if you're further interested in knowing something more about when the course would start and what would be the duration and all that, I think you can actually see the phone numbers over here. You can also see our website, it.com. So you can actually come to our website, you'll find further information, or you can contact any of these phone numbers. They will be able to give you the necessary information. Okay. So I think I have answered all your questions.
Sai Krishna, last doubt I have.
Yeah, tell me, Mahesh.
Actually, the thing is, while we are deploying the Kubernetes, we need to select one network, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Which network will give a good performance to the cluster?
See, you can take any network. Any of the networks are okay, and we will be practically seeing all the types of networks. Internally, what actually Docker uses is, irrespective of which network you are using, internally all these things are running on one single architecture called as the overlay network.
Okay,
so
okay.
It does not make any difference. I'll practically show you any of these networks. We will be seeing Kubernetes on AWS, but it does not make any difference, because internally all these are working on the same overlay architecture. You will see almost the same kind of performance as long as they are present in the same VPC. Do DevOps need separate AWS knowledge? I think this is not a DevOps course, Vinay. We are going to cover only Docker. Of course, Docker as implemented on AWS. Okay, but if you are trying to go with DevOps, I mean, our institute offers DevOps also. If you are interested in DevOps along with AWS, 100% would be a added advantage, 100%. Okay, basics of AWS would be good, nothing more than that. And of course, our course duration would be for approximately, I mean, if you're just talking about Docker and Kubernetes, this is for approximately 4 weeks, 1 month course it is. Every day it's a 1 hour session. So within 4 weeks, you would be seeing not only the basics of Docker and Kubernetes, but also entire real-time scenarios. Whatever scenarios I'm showing you in the class, the same scenarios you can go and you can tell in your interview saying that this is what you have done in your previous company, and that would be sufficient to convince the interviewer. So,
Sai, I just have a doubt from my end.
Yeah.
So these containers are now currently being mostly used in the cloud environment.
In cloud and also in-premise servers also. I won't say that it's only cloud. I have seen both scenarios where equally Docker is used on cloud and it's also used on our regular servers.
Okay.
Okay. In fact, containerization has come up as an alternative for cloud. There are lots of organizations. Very recently, I was giving a training for a team called as GLDT HSBC, where we were actually, their requirement was whatever data they had on the cloud, they did not want to have that data on the cloud. In HSBC, they wanted to move everything onto their in-premise servers so that they can run it everything on containers. So we had some sessions where I was actually trying to show how that complete stuff can be moved from the cloud that they are using. Of course, even that was a private cloud, but still they wanted to move it into a container environment. So there are lots of organizations where they are trying to implement containerization as an alternative for cloud also, where they don't want to depend on the cloud due to security reasons or whatever. So they are implementing everything on their own private servers, and it enables you to create that server setup very easily, very to depend on the cloud. Okay.
Hi, Sai.
Yeah. So friends, did I answer all the questions, or are there any more questions pending?
Is there any way to merge VMware infra with Dockers?
Whatever data is present in VMware, you want to move it into Docker?
Is fully vCenter server like EXI host and VR installation?
No. I mean, at least as far as my knowledge goes, we can't do that. I have never read such a scenario, but maybe in the advanced concepts of Docker or virtualization, such thing might be there. I'm not aware of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I think thanks for your patience. I think I have answered your questions, but are there some chat questions which I did not answer? Why Kubernetes is more famous as compared to Docker Swarm? Omkar, let me tell you. Kubernetes was initially a product of Google. Docker did not have the containerization concept. They just had how to create the necessary environment, but the container orchestration, that was an idea which was triggered by Google, and they created their own tool called as Kubernetes. And because it's a product of Google, you can imagine what kind of funding Google has and what kind of marketing Google can do. In a very short amount of time, Kubernetes picked up popularity because it was heavily funded by Google, and they were doing huge marketing on it. But later in 2017, Docker, understanding the potential of container orchestration, they felt that why should we depend on third-party software? They created their own tool called as Docker Swarm. And once Docker Swarm came into the market, Google realized that down the lane, it will be Docker Swarm, which will be having a bigger market, because Docker Swarm is directly a product of Docker. So with that intention, Google community has declared Kubernetes as a open source tool. So because initially it was funded heavily and it was adapted to a very large scale in majority of the organizations, you still see that Kubernetes is having a bigger market compared to Swarm. But the disclaimer is Swarm is a rising market and Kubernetes is slowly going down. So at this juncture, as a job seeker, you people should be aware of both. Maybe after 1 year or so, if you come to me, I said no need to waste time on Kubernetes. Maybe you can directly depend on Docker Swarm. Similarly, 1 year earlier, if you came to me, I would say no need to depend on Swarm, just depend on Kubernetes. But at this point of time, if you are looking for a job, it's ideal that you should learn both Kubernetes and Swarm. Okay, but down the lane, it might be Docker Swarm which will become more popular down the lane. Okay, I think Omkar, I answered your question. Praveen, fee of the course would be given to you. All that information would be given to you by our institute management. You can contact them on these phone numbers or on the website. And the course duration is 1 month. Docker with Kubernetes is 1 month, daily 1 hour session. What is the difference between Mesos and Docker Swarm? We are not using Mesos over here. Mesos can also be used. Swarm, Mesos, Kubernetes, all these are competitive products. They are doing the same container orchestration. Okay, but the truth is, majority of the market demand is for Kubernetes at this point of time. Moving down, the next one is Docker Swarm, not Mesos. But you know, all these are container orchestration tools only. Okay, they are just competitive products. What is the difference between Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, and IE? All these are browsers. I can use any of these browsers and I can launch my Facebook or book my show. Okay, but they have some, you know, better GUI, etc., etc. Similarly, all these are Kubernetes, Swarm, Mesos. All these are container orchestration tools. When as a job seeker, we should always concentrate on which one is having the maximum demand, which is Kubernetes, of course, and next Docker Swarm. Okay, so thank you all. Thank you so much. And if there are any questions which are unanswered, maybe if you can just ping it once in the chat. Any thought on OpenShift? OpenShift is just a cloud of Red Hat, but I don't have knowledge on that, Murthy. Okay, so I think I answered all your questions. So I mean, thank you so much, because on Sunday you had the patience to sit with me for almost 1.5 hours and listen to my session. So thanks a lot. And
thank you, thank you, Sai Krishna sir. Thank you everyone for joining the session. This is the conclusion of webinar. Thank you.
bye all of you.
Thank you. It was a nice session.